For the average person, I don't think they know anything about Corning.
You want to start in the beginning?
Yeah, let's start with Thomas Edison.
Actually, I keep that in my office, the very first order that he ever gave to Corning for the first time he came to us for glass envelopes.
That's incredible.
Yes, I keep that in my office to remind me the big things start out very small, because that is a very small order.
This week on Bold Names, we have Corning CEO Wendell Weeks. Now, what does Corning do? They have made everything from the glass in Thomas Edison's light bulbs to the glass screens on every iPhone ever manufactured. They also make the glass fibers in the fiber optic cables, which comprise the internet and which are huge now because of the AI boom. So how has this company remained relevant from the 1800s until the present day? That's what's next. Wendell, welcome to the show. I hear you endured the dot-com bubble, survived. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about what happened, right? Because there was the telecom boom.
Yes.
You guys were a big part of it in a way that isn't often acknowledged or known, because you were building the fiber optic cable that was being put into the ground by companies that, later went bankrupt. That affected you. What was the peak? What was the trough?
So at the peak, our optical communications business was far and away the core of our market value. At that point in time, I think our shares hit a high of about $100 per share in that zone. And because of our core invention, fiber optics, we did another one that lent itself beautifully to long distance transmission, which is what the internet was about. And so when that then went through its cycle, probably 90% of our revenue in our photonics business disappeared.
So 2000, 2001, 90% of your
revenue in photonics and probably about half of fiber optics. And we moved to a loss position. And at that point in time, our stock got as low as $1.50, and you could have bought the whole company for $1.5 billion.
Wow.
Yes.
So you were kind of on death's door, or private equity's hit list.
Yes, I am sure. Yes. So that happened pretty rapidly. And so what we had to do is first just quickly right the ship. But then after that, we went through a deeply reflective process about, okay, if we've just had lasted 150 years. If we wanted to last another 150 years after this near-death experience, the harshest time in our company's history, right? What would we have to do?
What was that process of recovery then?
Well, in the early days, what we really felt was we had broke the social contract with our people, because they had trusted us. They had signed up with us. We are a company that has very low attrition rates. We tend to hire, we're a little old-fashioned. We tend to hire for a whole career. So we had to let a large number of our folks go to get the liquidity right. So that was enormously painful. And of course, we went through a period of where leadership had low credibility. So what we had to do is decide, what do we want to build on top of this once we righted the ship? And we ran a process that did that and involved our folks and really changed a lot of not only how we ran the company, but also the attitude the leadership brought to it.
Yeah. You use the phrase social contract.
Yes.
I've never heard those words out of any CEO's mouth other than the chiefs of maybe Costco. So I just love to dwell on this for one more moment.
Sure.
You said you feel like you have a social contract.
Yes.
You want low turnover.
Yes.
But in this day and age, why do employees find that credible?
It's easy to keep the commitment that you have to folks when either things are going really well for you and that person is a high performer. What is hard is either when things are going poorly for the company. We just had a cycle with that. Back post-pandemic, all of our normally balanced businesses were force correlated during the pandemic. And so they all went down at the same time. And we had the longest decline period for us in revenue, 6 or 7 quarters since the telecom downturn. And what we decided to do was rather than to adjust our size by taking out another sort of 4,000 people, is to say, no, like we believe in our innovations. Like we're down because our markets are down.
So just very quickly, how did you make that work financially?
Basically, we made it work financially by letting our returns drop. There's no magic math, right? We kept higher fixed costs than our revenues would normally support. So our profitability dropped pretty significantly. And what we basically said is like, we're willing to be misunderstood for periods of time so that we can live to what it is we believe in. And at that time, we were just kind of mid-cycle into our Gen AI products we've been working on for 4 years. And that really helped lift us out.
So you said you're willing to be misunderstood for a long period of time.
Yes.
What are you working on now that might be misunderstood or underappreciated that you think is going to drive your growth 10 years, 20 years beyond?
But right now, we're just opening up the largest solar wafer manufacturing facility in the United States of America, because what we believed is that the U.S. would need to have energy independence, and that included renewables. And that is a market that has been dominated largely by China. And we knew, because we understood the base material well, and we make that for use in semiconductor, you use a dirtier form of that for solar. And we took the opportunity to move forward in the value chain and build this because we believed that we could build a really significant business and that solar would take a very large position over time in our energy mix in the U.S. And so that is largely unappreciated right now because we went through an investment cycle through it. But I think that's going to be a tremendous growth.
You know, there's 2 rules in life, right?
Mhm.
Number 1 is never get into a land war in Asia. Number 2,
oh, baby, you're my kind of people. If we're going to do Princess Bride, you and I are going to get along.
but number 2 though is it's a close corollary. Never get into a business that the Chinese government is willing to subsidize for all eternity. So, why are you getting into solar panels when your opponent is literally the CCP and for 30 years completely taken over the global solar panel market? It just seems crazy.
So first of all, this is something we've done a lot of. So you've got to realize in stuff like fiber optics, in display, in mobile consumer electronics, all of those products, we compete against Chinese companies, both in China and around the world. And we've done it quite successfully. The way we do it is we're always the lowest cost producer in the world, right? In what we do.
So you're confident that with this new plant, which I think is in Michigan,
yes,
you're going to be able to beat the subsidized cost of Chinese solar panels?
For a start, the government policy gave us a head start, which is the U.S. is either going to protect this market through tariff structures, which they're doing, or through what they did in the tax code to say, there's tax credits available if you manufacture renewable. That gave us the opportunity to do this, be able to quite confidently believe we'll get twice our money back that we're investing. And then after that, that will give us enough time to reinvent solar. And we have a number of ways which we think we can do that.
Okay, well, let's talk about that reinvention. We can talk about it in terms of solar if you want, or in terms of your overall product strategy.
Yes.
Outside of, let's say, defense contracting, the number of companies that are doing U.S. R&D for hardware, for stuff, for atoms rather than bits, that generally is in decline. What is it about Corning that allows you to do so much of that R&D domestically?
I think people misunderstand innovation quite often, especially in the materials space, which is they think the most important piece of innovation is invention. And it actually isn't, right? In many ways, that's sort of the most trivial part, right? what we try to do is build the whole company to deliver a real innovation. And that means we have to invent, yes, but then we have to make. We have to be deep experts in it. And we invent our own manufacturing processes. We build all of our own equipment ourselves, right? Because that's how we develop these high proprietary advantage products and processes that allow us to compete against anybody.
In 2017, Tim Cook said the reason that they are doing their manufacturing, with Foxconn in China is that there is so much more talent there.
Mm-hmm.
How are you able to close that skills gap, which we know exists in American manufacturing now, because we have lost, frankly, the knowledge for how to do so many things?
So a number of ways. First, if you're interested in our little slice, if you're an engineer or a scientist out there, and you're interested in our little slice of the periodic table and our little slice of the electromagnetic spectrum, we're like the place to work. So we never have had a problem attracting talent. Now, when it comes to manufacturing, one of the keys is to never stop. So we develop our own manufacturing folks. We train them ourselves. We hire right out of school. We have our own pieces. And then they work all over the world. So when we built our solar operation, we were able to take the last time we built a factory that big, we were building it in China. But those were the same Corning people that we sent from there that built that. And then some of the people that we had hired locally there to do that. And then that same skill set then helps us start up the next thing. And so we've always done this. We move skills between businesses because since we're so well balanced, there's always something in our innovation portfolio that's undergoing growth, while another piece sort of is undergoing a little bit of decline or maturity. But just because you work in one of our divisions or technologies that's going down, you don't work for that. You work for Corning. So what we do is we then move you from that division, that plant, to the area where we grow. And that's why most of the people at Corning have had tons of careers all working for the same company.
I'm glad you're talking about manufacturing expertise because as I understand it, you part of your current growth is that you're benefiting from provisions in the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Is that right?
Well, I think we're benefiting the not so much from the Big Beautiful Bill as we are this administration's focus on U.S. manufacturing is something that we are feeling and our customers are feeling, and it's increasing demand for us with sort of our pretty unique ability.
But to be clear, it's primarily increasing demand for your fiber optic product, right?
Fiber optics, but also what you just saw from Apple, which was super exciting, was we're going to make Apple's covers all in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, which was a plant we actually opened, I don't know, 1950s during the Cold War for particular Cold War products. And now Apple, we're going to dedicate that entire facility to them. And I think there's no question. Part of that is the focus on American-based manufacturing. And we're one of their suppliers and partners that can actually do that and do it at enough scale to do every iPhone.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of, shiny glass objects that you've been manufacturing for Apple, this summer when Tim Cook gave President Trump a glass plaque,
yes,
did Corning manufacture, I guess, the glass portion of that at least?
Yes, it was actually made in the Harrodsburg, Kentucky plant by the folks whose sort of lives are going to get covered and transformed for the next 2 decades because of Apple's commitment. So we wanted it to be made by those folks, is what Apple asked us to do.
I would love a little bit of behind the scenes color on that. Like, how do you and Tim Cook communicate? Did he call you up? Do you guys have like a red phone between the two of you? And he was like, Wendell, I need you to make a very special plaque.
No, they wanted something to commemorate this because it just didn't work out to have the White House come to the plant in the appropriate time when we were firing up this brand new tank and everything. And so to commemorate that, we just kicked around ideas, and we thought what would be great would be if the people made the product out of the glass that they actually make every day as sort of a labor of love for Apple to be able to make the gift. So it's our little version of arts and crafts.
So, and to be clear, this is like Gorilla Glass. Like if that gets knocked off of Trump's desk, it's not going to shatter.
Yeah, well, no, we didn't ion exchange
it.
But if we didn't take it all the way through the process, but it's the same base composition. Yes.
Overall, U.S. manufacturing output is down.
Mm-hmm.
You talk to the big manufacturers in the U.S., right? The biggest by volume, and they're not fans of tariffs. Why are these policies benefiting you but not others? Why are you uniquely positioned that you're not seemingly being hurt by tariffs, or if you are, it's being more than offset by increased demand and other incentives?
Because we make it all ourselves in a totally controlled supply chain manner. So if you're a big automotive company, you have tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, and then over time, as you seek to optimize cost, what happens is those various suppliers at various levels move to all sorts of different places. And so car companies don't actually personally manufacture a super high level of their content. They do in certain areas, right? So what happens is then tariff structures, since their suppliers aren't making it here, end up exposing them to that incremental economic penalty, which is meant to encourage them to make more of their content here in the U.S. And so the differential is what we did is we kept our advanced manufacturing footprint here, and we're able to do all the pieces.
Yeah, but to put a fine point on that also, like you're not buying your base material from overseas, or if you are, like there are no tariffs on, I don't know, sand?
Yeah. So in our base material, this is how seriously we take localization. We try to develop local sources for that. Like if we want to use
Gorilla Glass, it's going to be manufactured in Kentucky.
Yes.
Where is that mined?
We
where's
will
the base
source that stuff in Pennsylvania. Particular sand made in Pennsylvania.
So the billion-year-old hills of Pennsylvania, right. You're taking sand out of there.
Uh-huh.
You're shipping it to Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
That gets turned into the cover glass for
that's exactly
every iPhone on Earth.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. But we also will localize.
Does it get a Made in Pennsylvania sticker on there? Or Made in Kentucky,
I wish we did. That's such a great idea.
Like Apple, where they say designed by Apple in California, manufactured in China.
Made from Pennsylvania sand.
But I'm really curious, though, how specifically the sort of Trump manufacturing incentives are helping you versus the incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, incentivized solar, right? That was the regime under which you were like, we're going to invest in solar panels.
Yes.
Now, obviously, it's a different world of structures.
So what a great question. Deep question. So the first place to start is sort of the consensus has changed. The consensus used to be, right, sort of Milton Friedman, it was this financialization. It's like, we're all going to trade with the world, and whatever's the lowest cost, everybody's going to have their comparative advantage. And like that worked for a while, right? But then it stopped working, right? And so the consensus has sort of changed. Now, wait a minute. Like we need to be able to produce in the U.S. for the U.S. because like the world's not necessarily always a safe place, right? And we're not providing enough for our people. We get hollowing out all these great paths to middle-class jobs. So then the consensus shifted to, we're going to do some form of industrial policy. It's a very unpopular word, but it is really what they're doing. Like under Biden, it was, we're going to subsidize those things that we like.
Yeah, clean energy, for example.
Like in green energy. So we're going to create tax, advantage tax situation. Just like way back when, we've always had some form of industrial policy. Like the reason you have why do we have a deduction on your home interest, but not rent? Well, that's
right.
That's like industrial policy. I want to
the
build a
entire
lot of
Department
homes.
of Defense is industrial policy, is
Yeah,
responsible
that's
for
exactly
Silicon
right.
Valley in the first place.
It's just what people hate is like when they always like to start when a government picks a winner and loser. That's what we don't like, right? But creating incentive structures, that makes perfect sense. That's what you're supposed to do for your society.
So
right?
that was the IRA,
And then
industrial
now
policy.
Trump, what he would rather do is say, okay, what we're going to do is if you don't make it here, we're going to subject you to a tariff structure.
So
well, it's got the same
effect,
effect, right?
Yeah.
It's just who is paying for what when? This administration has proved so many economists wrong about what would the effect be of these tariff structures. Now, will it work? We'll see. I mean, the problem with manufacturing is it takes a long time. It took a long time for the U.S. to lose it, right? And it's taken a long time. It'll take a long time to bring it back. And that, to me, is the challenge of how do we want to face this as an American society.
So to sum it up, it feels like you are able to thrive in this new world order, which, if we look to history, it was many, many, many moons ago that tariffs were the primary tool of restructuring the American economy. You're a nearly 175-year-old company, so it feels like you're a company from another era.
Yes.
And now the U.S. government is saying, we'd like to return to that era. You're one of the few manufacturers that's actually positioned to take advantage of that.
And it's largely because, we do us, right? No matter what the problem, it's like, we're doing us, right? That's just us. And sometimes it's incredibly advantaged, living our life the way we want to live it. Sometimes it's disadvantaged. And when it's disadvantaged, you got to be willing to eat that pain to sustain manufacturing. And it just so happened that sort of government policy is now switched to be more in line with who we are. So now we look really smart. But in truth, we're just being us. We're not really smart. We're just being us. We're living our values, right? Does that make sense to you, Chris?
Yeah. You're a highly advanced, innovation focused, slightly twee, sepia toned company from another era. Bridging the ages from Thomas Edison to Sam Altman.
Because what we really believe is this. You just think about it. There's a lot from the past that's always worth keeping. There's also a lot from the past that is worth changing, right? But one thing from the past that's always worth keeping is the degree with which you never forget that it's not just standing behind a corporation, right? It's like real humans, right? Trying to build real lives. We don't always get it right, but that's we try to lead from who we are. That's who we are, right? And, sometimes we look stupid and sometimes we look smart, and neither is that true.
Yeah. Wendell, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on Bold Names.
Well, I've loved getting to know you. Come visit.
We reached out to Apple, but they did not respond to our request for comment. We also reached out to the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C., and a spokesperson disagreed with the characterization of China's place in the solar market. The spokesperson said China's, quote, leading edge, end quote, is the result of competitive advantage, not subsidies. A spokesperson for the White House said that President Trump's tariffs have yielded results for the American people, while the Biden administration, quote, haphazardly doled out taxpayer money. Finally, we reached out to the Biden administration, and former Chief of Staff Ron Klain said that President Biden put a strong focus on American manufacturing during his term in office, without the, quote, inflationary impact of tariffs.